You know how it goes, sometimes a game comes out and the critics jump on it, giving it low scores or just totally missing the point. But then, real players get their hands on it and it turns out to be an absolute banger. Well, today, we're calling out some of those bad takes. We're talking about 10 great games that critics totally reviewed wrong. These are the ones that deserved way more love. Let's get into it. Days Gone.
Brain ain't gonna change that.
This one came out in 2019 for PlayStation 4 and then later rocked up on PC, and for sure it's one of those games that critics just kinda missed the point on initially. So, here's the deal. Days Gone drops you into this super gnarly post-apocalyptic Oregon. The world's been taken over by these things called freakers, which are basically zombies but way worse in some ways. You play as Deacon St. John, who's this gruff motorcycle-riding drifter, a former outlaw biker who just lost pretty much everything that mattered to him. He's trying to survive in this broken world, dealing with freakers, crazy human survivors, and just trying to find some kind of peace. Now, why did the critics get this one terribly wrong, you ask? Well, when it first launched, a lot of reviews were like, oh, it's kinda slow to start, or it's just another open world zombie game, or the story takes too long to get good. And yeah, okay, maybe it wasn't a roller coaster right out of the gate, but honestly, that's kind of the point. First off, the story and characters are way better than people gave it credit for. Deacon is this super complex dude who's just trying to survive and keep the memory of his wife alive. You really feel his pain, his anger, and his struggle, and his relationship with his biker buddy Boozer is just fantastic. It's a genuine bromance in a world gone to hell. The story isn't just about zombies, it's about grief, trust, and humanity trying to pick up the pieces. It's a slow burn for sure, but man, when it pays off, it really pays off.
We don't have hope.
But the absolute main reason this game is legendary is the freaker hordes. Dude, forget everything you know about zombies. These aren't just a few shambling corpses. These are literally hundreds, sometimes thousands of freakers swarming at you like a horrifying living tide. Seriously, seeing the horde chase you is one of the most terrifying and thrilling things you'll ever experience in a video game. It's not just running away, you gotta use the environment, set traps, bottlenet them, and just try not to get totally overwhelmed. Nothing else feels quite like it, and mastering how to take down a horde, pure freaking satisfaction. And then there's your motorcycle. This isn't just a vehicle, it's your lifeline. You gotta keep it fueled, repair it when it breaks down, and upgrade it to survive. It feels awesome to ride, drifting around corners, kicking up dust, and using it to escape hordes. It becomes your best friend in that lonely, dangerous world. The open world itself, the Pacific Northwest, is just stunning but also super brutal. It's got beautiful forests, snowy mountains, and abandoned towns all teeming with danger. Every survivor camp feels like a precious safe haven, and just riding between them, scavenging for supplies, is a tense adventure. So yeah, while some critics might have rushed through it or judged it too quickly, Days Gone is actually a fantastic, immersive, and often terrifying open-world adventure. It's got heart, an amazing sense of survival, and those freaker hordes are an experience you just can't get anywhere else. If you want a game that slowly sucks you into its world and then throws hundreds of screaming zombies at you, you gotta give this one another shot in 2025. It's a true diamond in the rough that finally found its passionate fanbase.
What does it matter if everyone else is dead?
Quantum Break. Here's the deal with Quantum Break. It's a game about time travel gone wrong. You play as Jack Joyce, who gets caught in this crazy science experiment that totally breaks time. Now, suddenly time is glitching out, freezing, rewinding, and skipping all over the place. And because of the accident, Jack gets these awesome time-bending powers. But not just him. His old buddy Paul Serene also gets powers, but he ends up being the main bad guy, and he's kinda got a point sometimes, which makes things complicated. It's a race against time, literally, to fix the world before it totally breaks apart. A lot of the initial grumbling was about the game, mixing a video game with a live-action TV show. Yeah, you heard that right. After every big chunk of gameplay, you stop and watch like a 20-minute episode of a real TV show with actual actors. Critics were like, whoa, this isn't a game. But man, they totally missed how cool that was. Those TV episodes show you what the bad guys are up to, give you different perspectives on the story, and actually depend on choices you make in the game just before the episode starts. It's such a unique way to tell a story, and it made the whole conspiracy feel way bigger and more real. It was Remedy Entertainment trying something totally different, and it's awesome for that. And speaking of remedies, these are the same folks who made Max Payne and Control, so you know they know how to make cool action. The gameplay with Jack's time powers is just pure, unadulterated fun. You can stop time around enemies and then blast them with a flurry of bullets, or throw up a time shield to block incoming fire, or even dash super fast through areas like a blur. Combining those powers in combat feels so incredibly slick and powerful. Little Gears, you basically become a time-bending superhero, making huge explosions and crazy bullet trails as you zip around. Every fight is a playground for feeling like an absolute god. It's not just shooting, it's style shooting. So yeah, critics might have been too focused on it not being a traditional game, or maybe the TV show parts threw them off, but Quantum Break is an amazing game that critics reviewed terribly wrong because it dares to blend gaming and live action in a way no one else has really pulled off. It's got fantastic time-bending powers that make combat feel incredible, a deep twisty story, and that signature Remedy style. If you want a unique action game with a sci-fi plot that'll make your brain tingle, you absolutely gotta check this one out in 2025. You'll see what they missed. The Order 1886. Let's talk about a game that was absolutely gorgeous, but definitely got a raw deal. The Order 1886. This one dropped back in 2015, and it was actually a PlayStation 4 exclusive, which was a pretty big deal back then. Now, when The Order 1886 came out, a lot of critics kind of tore into it. The main complaints were usually, it's too short, or too many cutscenes, or it's super linear, or it's more like a movie than a game. And yeah, sure, if you went into it expecting a huge open world shooter that lasts for 80 hours, you might have been disappointed. But honestly, I think a lot of critics just completely missed the point of what this game was trying to be, and it's a shame because it's actually awesome if you look at it for what it is. Now, wait, before I talk about more about it, if the price tag for this game was a little lower when it launched, it would be really great, but hey, in this video, we are not talking about pricing, so I hope you understand that. First off, dude, the graphics and visuals were absolutely stunning when this game came out, and honestly, they still hold up today. It looked like a pre-rendered movie cutscene, but you were actually playing it. The character models, the lighting, the environments, everything was just gorgeous. You could zoom in on a character's face and it looked like a real actor. It was a true showcase for what the PS4 could do at the time, and it still feels incredibly cinematic. It's like playing a super high-budget Hollywood blockbuster.
Surrender yourself.
Then there's the setting and atmosphere. This game is set in an alternate history Victorian London in 1886, right? But it's not just a normal London. It's got this super cool steampunk vibe mixed with some dark fantasy. You play as Sir Galahad, one of the Knights of the Round Table, who are basically these immortal super soldiers protecting humanity from monstrous half-breed creatures like werewolves. So you've got gas lamps, steam-powered tech, trench coats, and you're hunting monsters in a spooky, foggy London. And yeah, people complained about the cinematic experience with lots of cutscenes, but that was clearly the point. It was designed to feel like an interactive movie, and it totally nails it. The story is intriguing, full of conspiracy, cool characters, and some genuinely unsettling horror elements. The gunplay, when you are playing, feels really solid too. Those steampunk weapons are awesome, and they pack a real punch. It's not a sandbox, it's a super tight, focused, roller coaster ride of a story. Ryse Son of Rome. The graphics and visuals in this game were freaking insane when it came out, and honestly, they still hold up incredibly well today. For a launch title on a new console, it was mind-blowing. The character models, especially Marius Titus, your main dude, a Roman centurion seeking revenge for his family, looked so detailed and lifelike. The armor, the environments, from the gritty battlefields of Britannia to the grand colosseums of Rome, were just dripping with detail and atmosphere. Then there's the combat system. Okay, so yeah, it's not Devil May Cry 3 with a million combos, Souls, but it's not trying to be. This is all about brutal, visceral, cinematic melee combat. You're swinging your sword, blocking with your shield, and using context-sensitive executions to finish off enemies in incredibly satisfying and violent ways. When an enemy is stunned, they'll glow a certain color, prompting you to hit a specific button, and then Marius will perform a crazy, bone-crunching, head-slicing finisher. It's incredibly satisfying to chain these executions together and just feel like an unstoppable Roman badass, hacking and slashing your way through hordes of barbarians. It might seem repetitive to some, but the sheer visceral impact and the constant flow of brutal finishers make it really addictive. The atmosphere and setting are also top-notch. You're living out this epic Roman Empire fantasy, fighting in massive battles, marching with your legion, and experiencing the sheer scale of ancient warfare. The story of Marius Titus's quest for revenge and his journey from a loyal soldier to a legendary commander is compelling enough to keep you engaged through all the blood and guts. It's a dark, gritty take on Rome that feels authentic, even with its mythical elements. So, while critics might have focused on its linearity or simplicity, they overlooked its unparalleled visual fidelity for its time, its incredibly satisfying and brutal combat loop, and its ability to transport you into a truly epic Roman war movie. It knew exactly what it wanted to be, a spectacle of Roman warfare, and it nailed it. Honestly, Ryse Son of Rome is an amazing game that critics definitely reviewed terribly wrong, because it was a stunning visual and visceral experience that delivered exactly what it promised: the brutal, cinematic fantasy of being a Roman soldier. If you want to feel powerful, witness incredible ancient battles, and enjoy some seriously satisfying sword and shield action, you absolutely need to dive back into Ryse in 2025. Nier 2010.
Why does every cook I meet have a bad attitude?
We have to talk about Nier 2010. This game is just wild. The original version first came out way back in 2010 for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, though the replicant version was the one we mostly got outside Japan, where you play as the brother, which is awesome. And listen, when this game hit, a lot of critics just kind of scratched their heads. They were like, the graphics aren't great, the combat's a bit clunky, and what even is this game? They gave it pretty average scores, but man, did they miss the point. Those critics were looking for like perfect polish and traditional gameplay, but Nier isn't about that. It's about its heart, its story, and its sheer beautiful weirdness. It's truly a game that punches you right in the feels when you least expect it. First off, the story and characters are just something else. You play as Nier, who's either a gruff dad in the original Japanese version called Gestalt, or a determined brother in the replicant version that most of us got, which is the one that got the awesome remaster. His whole mission is to save his sick daughter or sister, Yona, from a mysterious illness called the Black Squirrel. And along the way, you meet this wild crew. Kane, a foul-mouthed, half-monster warrior who's just trying to survive. Emil, a sweet kid who's got a super tragic secret and an unsettling power. And Grimoire Weiss, this sassy, floating magic book who's your constant, hilarious companion. Their relationships are so deep and complicated, and you really, really grow to care about all of them. The story isn't afraid to get dark, super emotional, and really make you think about humanity, sacrifice, and what's truly real.
My body.
And here's the kicker: to really get the story, you have to play through it multiple times. Each playthrough, which, don't worry, you mostly fast forward through the easy parts, unlocks new cutscenes, new perspectives, and huge mind-blowing revelations that completely change how you view everything that happened before. It's like watching a movie and then watching it again, but this time you know the secret, and suddenly everything makes sense, or makes even less sense, but in a good way. But the biggest, most undeniable reason this game is amazing is the music. Dude, the soundtrack for Nier is not just good, it's a masterpiece. It's beautiful, haunting, epic, and totally unique. It's got these eerie chants, soaring orchestral pieces, and even songs in a made-up language that will give you goosebumps. It perfectly fits the game's strange, melancholy vibe and pulls at your heartstrings at every emotional moment. Seriously, you could just listen to the soundtrack on its own for hours. And yeah, the game's kind of weird. It sometimes changes its style completely. Like suddenly you're playing a top-down shooter, or a side-scrolling platformer, or even a text adventure in the middle of a dungeon. Critics often found this jarring, but it just adds to Nier's bizarre charm and unique storytelling. Binary Domain. When it first came out, a lot of critics shrugged it off as another generic shooter or got frustrated with its voice command system, but man, they were missing out on something genuinely special. The Binary Domain is from the same folks at Ryuga Gotoku Studio who make the Yakuza games, and it has that same kind of quirky charm and surprising depth, even though it's a sci-fi third-person shooter. Critics often focused on the technical hiccups or the fact it wasn't super groundbreaking, but they completely ignored its beating heart and ridiculously fun combat. Let me tell you why Binary Domain is actually amazing and why those critics were too busy yelling at their microphones. First off, the combat against robots is unbelievably satisfying. Seriously, this isn't just about shooting bullet sponges. These robots are made of parts. You can blast off their armor piece by piece, shoot off their legs and watch them crawl at you, or pop their heads off and watch them go berserk, wildly shooting at their own allies. It's super visceral, tactical, and incredibly rewarding to see chunks of metal fly off with every hit. There's a real strategy to disarming them and targeting weak points, making every firefight feel dynamic and crunchy. But here's the real kicker, and what makes Binary Domain unique: the trust system. You're leading a squad of really cool, diverse characters, and how you act, whether you listen to their advice, perform well in combat, or even accidentally shoot them, oops, affects their trust in you. Their trust level actually changes how they perform in battle and even influences story moments and dialogue. It's a genuinely clever mechanic that makes you feel connected to your squad in a way most shooters don't. And yeah, the voice command system, where you could literally shout orders at your teammates, was a bit finicky, but when it worked, it was super immersive and made you feel like a real commanding officer. So while critics might have focused on some rough edges or its supposed lack of innovation, they overlooked the incredibly fun and tactical robot combat, the unique and impactful trust system, and a surprisingly heartfelt story with a memorable cast. It's a shooter that actually makes you feel for your squad and ponder some big ideas. Mad Max. A lot of the initial reviews said things like it's a bit repetitive, or the open world feels empty, or it's just another open world game. And yeah, on a surface level, some of those points might have a grain of sand to them, but they totally miss the roaring engine and brutal soul of this game. Forget lush forests or bustling cities, this game nails the feeling of a truly desolate, dangerous, and absolutely Mad Max world. Every piece of scrap, every drop of water, every bit of fuel feels incredibly important. The sandstorms are epic and terrifying, the sunsets are gorgeous over a barren landscape, and every ramshackle outpost feels like a desperate fight for survival. You really feel like you're just scraping by in a world that wants to kill you. But the absolute undisputed champion of this game is the vehicular combat. Oh man, the car fights. They are incredibly visceral and satisfying. You spend tons of time upgrading your ride, the magnum opus, turning it into the ultimate weapon on wheels. You're ramming into enemy cars, sideswiping them, popping tires with your shotgun, sending dudes flying off their vehicles with your harpoon, and pulling off parts. It's fast, chaotic, and every collision feels impactful. No other game really captures the feeling of brutal, desperate car combat like this one does. It's just pure, explosive fun. And even though the on-foot combat might seem simple, it's kind of like the Arkham games where you counter and hit, it's still super impactful and violent, fitting the world perfectly. Plus, just navigating that huge desolate map, finding hidden treasures, and blowing up enemy camps is incredibly addictive. The progression feels great too, as you slowly turn Max from a beaten down loner into a true wasteland warrior. So while critics might have focused on some repetitive elements or compared it too closely to other open world games, they missed how perfectly it captured the soul of Mad Max. It delivered an unparalleled wasteland experience centered around incredible combat and a constant, gritty fight for survival. Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. When it first came out, some critics nitpicked it, saying it had too much lore, generic quests, or felt too much like an MMO for a single-player game. And honestly, once fucking again, I think they totally missed the point of what made it special. First off, the combat system is just fantastic. Seriously, it's easily one of the best parts. It's super fluid, fast-paced, and feels like a single-player action RPG that took the best bits of MMO combat and made it exhilarating. You're chaining together attacks, dodging, blocking, and using powerful abilities in this awesome ballet of destruction. And when you unleash a Fate Shift finisher, oh man, time slows down, you just obliterate enemies in this super flashy, over-the-top way, and then bam, you get bonus XP. It's incredibly satisfying and never gets old. And then there's the class system, which is incredibly flexible. Instead of being stuck in one class, you can mix and match skills from 3 main paths: might, warrior stuff, finesse, rogue and archery, and sorcery, magic, obviously. You can literally become a battle mage who charges in with a giant hammer, then teleports away and blasts enemies with fireballs. The game lets you create your perfect fighting style, and it's awesome to experiment with. So while critics might have complained about a bit of repetition or the sheer amount of content, they overlooked the incredibly fun combat, the freedom to play your way, and a vibrant, expansive world that's just a blast to explore. It's a game that knows how to make you feel powerful and cool. Spec Op's The Line. Now when Spec Ops The Line first came out, a lot of critics looked at it and thought, oh, it's just another third-person cover shooter like all the others. They focused on the gameplay mechanics, which were solid but not groundbreaking, and often missed the absolute gut punch of a story it was telling. They didn't really get how much this game was playing with that. So here's why Spec Ops The Line is actually amazing and why critics didn't give its true genius enough weight. First off, this game isn't trying to be a fun power fantasy, oh no. It's a brutal, psychological deconstruction of military shooters. You play as Captain Martin Walker, leading a small Delta Force team into a sand-swept, destroyed Dubai to find a missing US Army unit. What starts as a simple rescue mission quickly spirals into a horrifying nightmare. The game constantly challenges your ideas of heroism in war. You're forced to make impossible, awful choices, and there are no good options, just less bad ones. It makes you feel incredibly uncomfortable, guilty, and complicit in the horrors that unfold.
What's going on here?
Survival, Captain.
The story is heavily inspired by Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, which also inspired Apocalypse Now, and it takes you on a chilling journey into madness. As Walker and his team descend deeper into the chaos, you see the mental toll it takes on them, and on you, the player. The game subtly messes with your head, showing you things that might not be real, challenging your perception of events, and making you question everything. It's a really smart, unflinching look at the psychological damage of war, which is super rare for a shooter. So, while the basic shooting mechanics might have felt familiar, they were just the vehicle for this incredibly powerful and thought-provoking narrative. The gameplay serves the story, making you actively participate in the moral decay and horrors rather than just passively watching. And the endings, man, they'll stick with you long after you finish playing, forcing you to really think about what you did. Dante's Inferno. Now, when Dante's Inferno first launched, a lot of critics just kind of shrugged. They called it a God of War clone because of its hack and slash style, or they said it was too gory or repetitive. And yeah, it takes inspiration from other games, but honestly, those critics totally missed the brutal, imaginative, and surprisingly cool ride this game takes you on. And let me tell you why Dante's Inferno is actually amazing, and why those critics were too busy comparing it to other games. First off, the setting is absolutely wild and unique. This game literally takes you on a journey through all 9 circles of hell, just like in the classic poem Dante Alighieri's The Inferno. You play as Dante, not the poet here, who's just come back from a brutal crusade to find his love, Beatrice, dragged to hell by Lucifer himself. So you're literally fighting your way through limbo, lust, gluttony, greed, anger, heresy, violence, fraud, and treachery. Each circle is visually distinct and creatively grotesque, filled with insane demons, tortured souls, and epic-scale bosses. It's a super bold and dark adaptation of a classic, and it's incredibly imaginative. The combat is totally satisfying. Yes, it's a hack and slash, but it feels weighty and fun. You've got Dante's giant scythe, taken from death no less, for brutal melee attacks, and a holy cross for ranged magic attacks. What makes it cool is the punish or absolve system. When you defeat enemies, you can choose to either brutally punish them or mercifully absolve them. This choice actually changes how you level up and unlocks different abilities, letting you customize your playstyle a bit. It's a neat twist that fits the game's themes. And the boss fights, oh man, they are huge, grotesque, and totally memorable. You're fighting giant demons representing the sins, and they're epic spectacles. The whole game just drips with this dark, intense atmosphere that really pulls you in. So while critics might have written it off as just like that other game, they overlooked its incredibly unique and imaginative journey through hell, its satisfyingly brutal combat, and its bold adaptation of a classic poem. It might be gory, but it's gory with purpose and style. The Evil Within. When it came out, critics were really split. Some praised its horror, but many others dinged it for things like clunky controls, technical issues like inconsistent frame rates or the forced letterboxed black bars, and sometimes feeling a bit old school in a way they didn't appreciate. They often focused on its imperfections rather than its raw, visceral strengths. But look, this game is a true return to brutal survival horror. It's directed by Shinji Megami, the legendary creator of Resident Evil, and he was clearly going back to his roots. This isn't an action game where you mow down zombies, it's about desperate resource management, constant tension, and feeling utterly vulnerable. Every bullet counts, every match to burn a corpse is precious, and every encounter with a monster is a terrifying gamble. It forces you to think, strategize, and sometimes just run like hell. The atmosphere and horror are relentlessly disturbing. The Evil Within doesn't rely on cheap jump scares, though it has a few. Instead, it builds a constant oppressive feeling of dread. The creature designs are grotesque and truly disturbing, the environments are nightmarish and constantly shifting, and the psychological horror gets under your skin. It's gory, it's unsettling, and it genuinely wants to make you uncomfortable, and it succeeds beautifully at that. Yeah, the controls might feel a little stiff or the combat a bit clunky compared to a modern action game, but for many players that actually adds to the feeling of vulnerability and survival. You're not a super soldier, you're just Detective Sebastian Castellanos, an ordinary guy caught in an extraordinary, horrifying nightmare. That intentional clunkiness makes every movement feel heavy and every escape feel like a genuine struggle for survival. Remember Me. When it first hit the scene, a lot of critics were kind of mixed on it. They often mention it being too linear, or the combat being a bit repetitive, or even the story getting a little hard to follow. They looked at it with a critical eye, missing the truly innovative and stunning stuff it brought to the table. First off, the world building is absolutely gorgeous and super clever. The game is set in Neo Paris in 2084, a stunning cyberpunk future where memories can be bought, sold, or even stolen. It's a visually spectacular city with incredible art direction, blending old world architecture with high-tech neon and futuristic gadgets. Just exploring it is a treat, and the concept of a society addicted to memory feels super relevant even today. But the real showstopper here, and what makes Remember Me truly unique, is the memory remixing system. You play as Neelan, an errorist, who can actually steal and remix people's memories. In certain key moments, you get to literally jump into someone's memory and change tiny details in it to alter their perception of reality. It's like a puzzle where you rewind and fast forward, tweaking specific elements, like maybe making a safety harness snap or changing a sign to completely mess with the person's mind and make them believe something different. It's a brilliant, creative mechanic that feels genuinely fresh and plays a huge role in the story. The combat is also pretty neat. While it's a melee-focused system, it's not just button mashing. You get to build your own combo lab where you create and customize your attack chains. You can choose different press-ins, the actual moves that deal more damage, heal you, or reduce cooldowns for your special abilities. It lets you tailor your fighting style to your liking and makes battles feel pretty fluid and rhythmic once you get the hang of it. Castlevania Lords of Shadow. A big complaint was that it felt too much like God of War, that it wasn't a traditional Metroidvania, Castlevania game. They pointed to its linearity and quick time events, basically saying it was derivative and not true to the series. But hey, I ain't saying. These games are perfect, but again, it's a bit unfair. The atmosphere and world building are absolutely breathtaking. Mercury Steam, with a little help from Hideo Kojima, crafted a truly epic dark fantasy world. You're Gabriel Belmont, a knight on a quest through a dying, monster-infested medieval Europe, and every single environment, from ancient forests and ruined castles to frozen peaks and demon strongholds, looks stunning and feels incredibly oppressive. The sense of scale is just immense, and the gothic art direction is some of the best you'll see. And the music? Man, it's a phenomenal orchestral score that just elevates every moment. Yeah, the combat system took inspiration from games like God of War, but it executed it with its own unique flair. You wield the combat cross, a versatile whip that can be used for devastating combos, grappling, and even lighting up the darkness. You also get light magic for healing and shadow magic for extra damage, which adds a cool strategic layer to every fight. The combat is fluid, impactful, and super satisfying, especially when you're tearing through hordes of monstrous creatures or taking down gargantuan bosses. Speaking of which, the boss fights are truly epic spectacles, often requiring you to climb massive beasts like in Shadow of the Colossus. So while critics might have focused on its inspirations or the departure from Castlevania's usual style, they overlooked a game that delivered an epic scale, a truly captivating gothic atmosphere, incredibly satisfying combat, and a compelling emotional story that brilliantly reimagined a beloved franchise. It's a fantastic action game in its own right. Honestly, Castlevania Lords of Shadow was an amazing game that critics definitely reviewed terribly wrong because they often judged it for what it wasn't, a traditional Metroidvania or a completely original combat system, rather than appreciating it for what it was, a grand, beautiful, and hard-hitting action adventure that deserved to be loved. If you're into dark fantasy and epic monster slaying, you absolutely need to give Gabriel Belmont's Journey a try in 2025. Rage 2. Now, when this bad boy first roared onto the scene, the critics were they were like a flat tire in the desert. A lot of them gave it pretty mixed reviews, saying things like, oh, the open world feels empty, or the story's pretty thin, or it's just another generic sandbox game with repetitive stuff to do. They looked at the big map full of icons and kind of sighed, hoping for something deeper or more groundbreaking in its world design. And yeah, if you're comparing it to, say, a huge RPG with a bazillion lore books and intricate character choices, maybe those points stick. But here's where those critics completely, totally, absolutely missed the point of what Rage 2 was here for. They were looking for a fancy steak dinner when this game was serving up the most ridiculously fun, explosive, and unapologetically over-the-top junk food feast you could ever ask for. And I can't stress this enough, the gunplay in this game is god tier. Seriously, it's one of the most satisfying first-person shooting experiences you'll find. This is where the geniuses at ID's Software, the Doom folks, mixed their special sauce with Avalanche Studios' The Just Cause crew, open world chaos. Every single weapon, from your trusty assault rifle that feels perfectly punchy, to the devastating shotgun that sends enemies flying into chunky jibs, to the incredibly fun grav dart launcher that lets you pin guys to walls and then launch them into each other. Every single weapon feels incredible. The sound design, the visual feedback, the sheer kinetic energy of each shot is just perfection. But wait, there's more. You're not just a regular gun-toting hero. You've got these awesome nanotrite abilities that turn you into a superhero of destruction. Imagine Force pushing a dude with shatter so hard he explodes against a wall, or leaping into the air and slamming down for a massive ground pound that sends enemies flying, or my personal favorite, using Vortex to create a mini black hole that sucks enemies in and then spits them out like confetti. And when things get really wild, you pop Overdrive mode, which supercharges your weapons, makes you nearly invincible, and regenerates your health as you just cause even more glorious neon-colored explosions. Every combat encounter turns into this incredible, fast-paced dance of death, mixing guns, powers, and pure chaos. The vibe of this game is just unmatched. Forget the drab, depressing post-apocalyptic worlds. Rage 2 is a vibrant, punk rock, explosion-fueled fever dream. It's got bright neon signs, crazy mutant factions with mohawks and ridiculous outfits, and explosions that light up the sky in every color of the rainbow. It's loud, it's stylish, and it absolutely revels in its own anarchic aesthetic. It's like a Saturday morning cartoon crossed with a heavy metal concert, all set in a Mad Max. And yeah, the open world might not have the deepest lore or the most complex quests, but that's okay. Its purpose isn't to be a deep RPG. It's a giant, beautiful playground for all that amazing combat. You drive around in sweet, customizable vehicles, getting into ridiculously fun vehicular combat, smashing through bandit roadblocks, and discovering mini arenas just begging for you to unleash hell. It's about finding outposts, jumping in, and just tearing them apart with your powers and guns. It's a game that respects your time by not forcing a complicated narrative on you and instead just focuses on making the core gameplay loop as addictively fun as possible.